Hello, everyone. Nice to see there are some participants already there. We are going to wait at least next 6 minutes. Maybe we'll wait a little bit more if we see that not all participants are here or only a few ones. So we give a chance to the ones who can be a bit later. Then once by one colleague here started music playing in this space. Like when you're here and you just wait and just classical music playing, relaxing music to set the right mood.
I have Alexa. I can put something on if you choose.
You can just pick on your own taste what you have.
I don't know.
I'm not
Alexa has about 1
picky
million
about
songs.
music. I'm not picky about music. I like this webinar setting because we have above this chat and Q&A separately. So it's very convenient for the webinars because you separate regular comments to questions that are only for the Q&A session. So I didn't know it before I organized it as a webinar. So that is a difference from regular meetings.
Yeah, this is amazing. And even it is really relevant to clarify that you can ask whatever you want, but also we can read all the questions at the end of the webinar, and then we can organize better the section of question and answer.
I don't actually see the question and answer section that you're talking about.
You're not saying it's above. Do you have this menu tab above?
I have take control, pop out, chat, people, raise, react, view, more, camera, mic, and share. So you'll have to answer all the questions.
Okay, I can read all questions, not answer. But Janet, you can see it, right?
Yep, I can.
Strange.
So just like next to the chat, we have a separate button called Code Q&A.
No. No, it's not showing for me.
Okay, I don't.
If there is somebody else that is unable to see the same button, even they can write the questions at the chat, and that even could work well. So don't hesitate in ask, even if you don't find that buttons just in the chat directly.
So I suppose everyone sees chat. Yeah. So if you want to put question, you can also put in chat. Just more difficult for us from organization side. Then we have there and there questions. So, but it's good to have them in one place, but we also can read both chats. That's not a problem. So we will wait a couple minutes before we start. So the people that are already here, you're very welcome. You have a couple minutes to grab a cup of coffee, because we're going to have 2 hours. No pauses are planned. So I hope you'll get at least some water, something to drink. And the cameras are off, so you can also eat some cookies, chocolates, something positive, and you don't need to switch on the camera.
Need to send me some, Inessa, if you have some there.
I always drink tea during the day, so I always have some, like a bottle with tea.
I was thinking more of the chocolates you mentioned.
Chocolates. I don't have them right now.
Okay, so we have 26 now. You want to start with the introductions?
Okay, let's start. The ones who come later can always rewatch it, or introduction. It's something. It's not like really critical if you skip it. So, hello everyone, and you're very welcome to our webinar, Annex 1, Difference between Alert Limits and Trend Analysis. We are here 3 experts from 3 different companies. Me from LabVision, Paul from Paul Palmer Limited, and Janet from GMP Check Solutions. But we will tell about us a bit more later. So, at this webinar, what we are going to do and what we are going to learn today. We'll have 3 modules, so each of one has 30 minutes to tell about their expertise in this topic. And we will learn the difference between alert limits, action limits, and trending analysis. We'll see how to identify and interpret out of trend and out of specification results. We will talk about common pitfalls in trending and how to avoid them. We will see how to apply trend analysis for process understanding and continuous improvement. And at last, we will see how to set alert limits and perform trend analysis in Empower CDS. So, short introduction from our side. Janet Flo is a GXP lead quality auditor and quality director at GMP Check. So she's a founder of GMP Check. Then Dr. Paul R. Palmer is a pharmaceutical consultant and responsible person, and also a founder of Paul R. Palmer Limited. And me, Inessa Peters, Empower CDS expert and founder of LabVision. So we are happy you're here now and that you found your time to join us at this webinar. We know how valuable time now and how difficult to find it during working hours. So many thanks for that. Before we start, here are some webinar rules, or not rules, I will say some notes. So we are recording this webinar, so you can rewatch it later. We are going to send you an email after this webinar where we send you a link to the recording, and we'll send you the full presentation of our slides. So you're very welcome to the notes, but it's not like necessary, just relax, listen. You will get all presentations from us afterwards. Furthermore, we are going to have a Q&A session after 3 sessions of us. And in this session, we are going to answer all your questions. We have here in Teams the chat button. And we have, maybe not all of you, but please check if you have it, the Q&A button. So please put your questions, if possible, in the Q&A chat, so it's easy for us to sort them out and to answer them during the Q&A session. And also, for us to make it faster, please put name of the expert you want to ask this question to. Or you can write all if it's relevant for all of us, because we come from different areas, so we can quickly direct this question to the right person. So I hope it's clear. Yeah, maybe you can give a sign if it's everything great from your side, and then we can start. And I will give a word to Janet to her session. Janet, I will end my sharing the screen so you can share your presentation now.
We have somebody's hand up. Oh, it's gone now.
I suppose it means that they are all clear. So everything works good.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Inesa, for your introduction. Well, I will begin presenting myself. My name is Janet Flor. I am a lead GXP auditor. I am IASB and IRCA certified. And IRCA, my certificate is about pharmaceutical quality management system. I have around 13 years of experience in GMP and GDP compliance. As you can hear, because of my tone of voice, I was born in Argentina, but I am living in Italy since 3 years ago. And I begin to perform, I am full dedicated as quality auditor since 4 years ago. I began performing audits in Latin America, United States, and now that I moved to Europe, I am based here. It's more easy to move all around the world, even because sometimes, because of my native language is Spanish, I continuously travel also to Latin America. In the last 2 years, I performed around 60 audits, all of them GMP audits or GDP audits. And my work is mainly focused in the Parenteral Drug Association, FDA 21 CFR or the EMA regulation. But also I have contact with other type of references and also guidelines. And currently, I'm also giving some support to the Parenteral Drug Association and IASB. In IASB, I've been involved in different communities of practices. I've been also part of the, I was the chair emerging leader of Argentina. And I was also part of board of directors in Argentina. And now that I moved to Italy, I am part of the Women in Pharma Steering Committee. My main mission is try to communicate a different point of view of the auditor, because usually it is seen as the auditor is the police. And I would like to change that perspective and try to communicate that the auditor is also part of the quality management system. It's an external role, but it's really fundamental, it's really relevant that the collaboration between the internal team and the external team at the end of the day look for the same result, that is the quality of our products and the safety of our patients. I will introduce quickly GMP Check Solution. There is a global consulting company specialized exclusively in GXP audits. It includes GMP, GDP, GCP, GLP, also medical devices and GAMP. We work through an international network of certified and multilingual auditors, providing independent and high-quality audit services to pharmaceutical, biotechnology, and medical device companies worldwide. Our mission is to support organizations in the supplier management, trying to make that work so much more easier, and letting that the quality team could be dedicated to other things. Because to be honest, to manage all the suppliers for big companies and sometimes even for small companies takes a lot of time from the internal resources. So the idea is that GMP Check can support all your supplier management system without extra effort. Let's begin with out of specification or awful trend. How to avoid ignoring critical things. The first concept that I would like to introduce is that detect an out of specification, or in this case, an out of trend, is really relevant for us in order to interpret the trend as a signal. So we all know that we will work also for being compliant with the regulations, but let's see a little bit more about what is behind the regulation and why we are looking for to keep under control our numbers, our historical data, our statistical information. Is just an analysis, is just a photo about how we are managing our processes, and about if we have or not under control all the parameters of the process. So why we decided to do this webinar? It is mainly because during the last audit that I performed, I identify confusion between the out of specification, out of trend, alert limit, and trending. Because usually for the auditees, the specification was of course defined generally by the regulations and sometimes optimized internally by the team if the work is well done, of course. And the out of trend was usually really confused with the alert limits that could be the same, but could not be the same. So let's see a little bit more about this. Talking with Paul, we identified that we observed the same pattern across multiple sterile manufacturing sites. And then we created this webinar to clarify the theoretical definition, show the practical differences, and share the real world cases and tools to apply depending on the scenario. And of course, we also count with Inessa that she will help us to identify and treat all the information through the Empower system. There is, of course, a critical area that I am really curious to understand more about Empower, because for me it's not one of the is not my specialty. So let's see what is she ready to share with us. So let's clarify quickly that, for example, we have regulations like the regulations that could be from the USA or from Europe, and now even the harmonization guidelines like the ECH Q9 and ECH Q10 are reference. I mean, there are regulations, and then we have guidelines that explains how to achieve the requirements that are explained in the regulations requirements. For example, the WHO guidelines, I pick guidelines for raw materials, ISO, ISPE, or PICS. Let's see a little bit about trend in numbers. How many times is the word trend mentioned in Eudralex Volume 4 Annex 1? It is mentioned around 23 times. Most of these mentions are found in Section 9, viable and non-viable environmental process monitoring, especially in the context of trend data review and the definition of alert and action limits. How many of the last audit on a sterile process show this issue? Personally, I detect any issue based on trend analysis and all the audits that I performed during the last year in an sterile process or Annex 1 regulation. And the last question is, how many QA professionals can clearly explain the difference between an alert limit and out of trend results? Let's see some pieces of the regulation that mention trend and what the Annex 1 is looking for. Results for critical parameters and critical quality attributes of high-risk utilities should be subject to regular trend analysis to ensure that system capabilities remain appropriate. Equipment monitoring requirements should be defined in user requirements specification. Process and equipment alarm events should be acknowledged and evaluated for trends. The frequency at which alarms are assessed should be based on their criticality. More stringent action limits may be applied based on data trending, the nature of the process, or determining within the contamination control strategy. Both viable and total particle alert levels should be established based on results of cleanroom qualification tests and periodically reviewed based on ongoing trend data. Because in the regulation, you can find some tables that determine the maximum total particle action limits, but even the regulation is asking to adjust those limits based on your historical data. Alert levels for grade A, grade B, C, and D should be set such that adverse trends are detected and addressed. Monitoring procedures should be defined the approach to trending. Trends should be included but are not limited to increasing number of excursions from action limits or alert level, consecutive excursions from alert level, regular but isolated excursions from action limits that may have a common cause, changes in microbial flora type and numbers, and predominance of specific organisms. The monitoring of grade C and D clean rooms in operations should be performed based on data collected during qualification and routine data to allow effective trend analysis. Environmental monitoring data and trend data generated for classified areas should be reviewed as part of the product batch certification release. There are more mentions, of course, in the Annex 1, but let's see the difference between our specification, there is a result outside of the approved specification limits. What is an alert limit is a preliminary warning level still within specification, but signals a potential issue. What is an action limit? Is a threshold that requires immediate investigation and corrective actions. Trend means a gradual or repetitive variation in results that may indicate loss of control, even when results are within specification. And finally, out of trend is a result that does not follow the historical pattern, even if it is within specification. So the main question is, can a result be within specification but still out of trend? And the answer is yes, and that's often where the real risk begins. Why we must detect trends? It helps because it's useful to detect early some issues for getting a stronger and more reliable process. It helps to reduce risk or out of specification events in a preventive way, greater control and confidence in data, and to get a proactive quality assurance department. Environmental, where should I apply a trend monitoring in general? In environmental and personal microbiological data, in process physical and chemical parameters, equipment performance data, particulate monitoring results, and calibration and maintenance records, between others. So trend must be applied to so many different aspects of our processes. How can we detect an out of trend? We have different tools or different strategies. We have traditional control charts, custom charts, statistical softwares like Minitab. We can also manage our trend based on Excel. Of course, that following different rules like validation of our Excel sheets and automate alerts within electronic monitoring system like Empower system. What happens if I detect an out of trend? First of all, we must be really sure about that the result is out of trend. We must confirm the result and review the data, then investigate potential causes, evaluate statistical significance, take corrective or preventive actions, and then document everything in your quality management system, of course, following your internal SOPs. Let's see a little bit about this graphic that, of course, is, let's see what is happening with this first result. Clearly, these results are inside of, let's suppose that the first line is the specification, the action limit, and then we have an alert limit that is this one. The same happened with the superior limit. This is the alert, and this is the action limit. Okay? So the first 8 numbers, the first 8 results are clearly inside of specification, but the results are out of trend. I mean, out of the action limits, let's say. In this case, the limits, the warning limits, are defined as a media plus best 2 deviation standards. And the question is, in this case, what type of action I must to take? Of course, that every company have their own internal procedures, but usually also we need to identify these numbers as an alert. We must identify this number that can show us that we are not getting our process under control, even if we are under a specification. But what happened with the following numbers, the following results? Those results, all of them, are inside of action limits and inside of alert limits. But what do you think? Those numbers are have any correlation that can allow us to see that even they are all out of trend or not? And the answer is yes. We can see clearly that the numbers are suffering and increasing in the time. So the results are inside of specification for the alert limits and for the action limits, but still out of trend. And this is really relevant to understand, because sometimes people say, okay, but my results are under action limits and under alert limits, so I have my trend under control. That's fake. That's not true. And let's see why we are worried about the fact that our numbers are giving to us a photo about our process is not 100% under control. Why we must to evaluate these results in this way? First of all, because all the regulation mentions a lot of times that all the process and all the parameters must be defined based on risk. So even if you are not, for example, if you are not producing some, you don't have a sterile process. You have a process, a manufacturing process that is not specifically sterile. Even your process must be based on risk. So to get your numbers inside under control, it means that you have your risk under control. Also, it is because the regulation mentions a lot of time that we must to get a preventive approach. So if I would like to get a preventive approach, I must to know what is happening with my process, even if I have all the results under specification, because I know that the next point here probably will be out of specification for my alert limit. And the last one concept is, as I said before, that we must be sure that we know our process and that I have my process under control. For example, as auditor, of course that I don't know the process as well as you know your process, because you are working all day inside of your process and your company, and you must to explain to the auditor or to the inspector how are you sure, why are you sure that you get your process under control. But if I see this graphic and I don't see any action taken, even under action limits and alert limits, I am not feeling that you have your process under control. So let's see an example in which we can identify different trends that are, I mean, mainly all of them, yes, mainly inside of the alert limits and inside of action limits, but still out of trend. The section number 1. Okay, let's mention first of all this. We need to verify the trend in 2 different ways. In real time, to validate a series of analyses, and subsequently to study possible trend or problems. So much companies perform a trend analysis in real time, but they don't do a subsequently analysis. And there are so many companies that perform an analysis after of the historical data, but they didn't check in real time. So both of them are wrong approach to the trend analysis. Coming back to the first part of this graphic, the green part, and this is called a random target oscillation. The results could fluctuate randomly on either side of the target value within the control limits. This means that your analytical method is under control. It also means that your results are accurate. So this section is a normal flow of our process. Let's see the section number 2. This is an upward or downward, but could be also upward trend. This means that you can clearly observe several consecutive points above or below the mean. This indicates an issue with the accuracy of your analytical method. Then let's move to the third section. This is clearly an increasing trend, could be increasing or decreasing, of course, but you notice consecutive points consistently rising or falling. This indicates a degradation in precision or accuracy of your analytical method. The point number 4 is a point between the control and alert limit, or the action and alert limit. And the point number 5 is an exceeding, a point that exceeds the control limit. So here you have different examples about how an analytical method, for example, could develop, and how you can identify even out of trend, even if you are inside of specification for action limits and for alert limits. And the last one is the CUSUM chart for small, sustained long-term deviations. To detect a small but sustained deviation, if data fluctuates within control limits and do not Zeiger alerts on a shearward chart or CUSUM chart can show that the results are gradually moving toward a trend change. It means that you can see inside of this graphic that everything is under control. But at the end of the day, when you perform subsequently studies, you can realize that even you can get out of trend values through the CUSUM chart. It also helps when continuous and sensitive monitoring is needed, ideal for critical processes such as sterile process parameters or microbiological data, where small repeat changes may anticipate issues. In the analysis of precision and accuracy of analytical methods, if laboratory results show slowly trend out of range, CUSUM allows early detection before an out of specification occurs. And for stable process with a low variability, works best when the process is under control, but you want to ensure that even minor deviations are detected quickly. The advantages of CUSUM is detects small changes faster than traditional charts, provides early alerts before action limits or auto specification are reached, complements traditional control charts, does not replace them. And this is an example about how you can determine, for example, in the point 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30, all of them are all out of trend. Even if in the initial graphic you cannot see that, you can check quickly. For example, for this graphic, I use Minitab. You can find in the presentation here the link, and the website will explain you quickly how to do this graphic and evaluate the retrospective data to evaluate if there is any deviation based on the CUSUM chart of data. Final takeaways. Staying within the specification is not enough to guarantee that you have your process under control. Trend awareness is a regulatory and quality requirement, but even it really helps to get a preventive approach, a risk-based approach, and to be predictive with your data even before to obtain out of trend or an out of the alert specification or the action limits. It is a practical tools exist to support proactive QA. Don't wait for an auto specification. Listen your data before it screams. Even I would like to mention that this approach is really relevant. Sometimes people say, how can I know that I get my data under control? And the reality is, of course, the regulation asks for some controls, but they doesn't explain how to do that, how to achieve that. So the reality is when somebody that is in charge of, for example, a QC department, he's able to, or she's able to explain the data, and they feel sure about what they are talking about, because you can explain easily if you are inside of specification, out of specification, but it's not really easy to explain if you are out of trend or not. So every company, every department will develop their own strategies and tools to analyze the trend analysis. But first of all, you must identify this as a critical point, and you must I'm sorry, I lost here. And you must evaluate your data. Of course, you must write the SOP and create different tools and different strategies, but you must get your data clear by yourself. And then you will be able to show and explain that to an auditor or an inspector. But first of all, you must trust your data and your information and your process. Here you can find my my personal email, my LinkedIn, my phone number. If you would like to scan the QR code, I guess that is, it will conduct to my LinkedIn. If you have any doubt, any question, or if you have any practical documentation that you would like to share with me, or you don't know how to make front to some results, please be sure that if you contact to me, I will try to do my best to help you, even just mentioning some strategies or sharing some links, such as the Minitab link, because Minitab is really complex to use if you don't know how to use. But if you enter in the webpage, you can find a lot of different helps or videos even that helps you to use the application in an amazing way. And here you can find the email of GMP Check, the phone number, the LinkedIn, and if you scan the QR code, you will get access to the webpage. I guess that now is the moment of poll. Is that right, Ainisa?
Yes, but I see also there is a hand from Abdullah Al Masood. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. I will let your microphone now be able to activate it. So if you want, you can ask your question directly, or you can put it in the Q&A session or in the chat.
Hello, I am MD Abdullah Masood, and I am watching and attending this session from Bangladesh. I'd like to ask a question regarding the requirement of trend data. I am currently working in the biotech lab area, so most of the tests are qualitative, not quantitative. For example,
Yeah.
if I want to test like pH or protein content or something like the conjugated protein or unconjugated protein, this type of data. But
Yeah.
I don't know whether I have to maintain the trend for all the specification, all the parameters, or there is some kind of selective parameters that I have to maintain the trend analysis to get the out of trend and out of specification, like to prepare myself before the OS. So what kind of parameters should I select to make a trend?
Okay, if you have qualitative analysis and you don't have quantitative analysis, of course, there is really complicated to do a statistical analysis and trade your data, because your data is not about numbers, it's not quantificable. So generally, almost all the strategies that I explained before are not really applicable. But still, you must keep an historical data about your results regarding the not the quantity, but yes, your results. Because let's suppose that you have a node of specification every Monday. So maybe it's not quantitative because you cannot quantify, I don't know, a quantity of molecules, but or particles. But you can even evaluate how your process is developing on time, and you can find some patterns, and you can discover that all Mondays you have an auto specification.
Yes.
And then you can open, of course, a deviation and an investigation to try to understand what is causing that.
Yeah, I understood. Thank you.
Thank you. There is somebody else that would like to ask. Even I guess that we have even NAQ Q&A section at the end of the webinar? Is that fine?
Yes. I think we better leave questions for the Q&A session. Yeah.
Okay.
And continue. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
First, can I check everybody can see my screen? Can you see a screen? And next one, difference between alert, limit and trend analysis?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't show for me that it's showing. It just shows the participant screen, so I can't actually check. Okay, good.
We see it.
Good, good, good. So, I'm Paul Palmer, Dr. Paul R. Palmer now. I'm a consultant, a pharmaceutical consultant. I'm a qualified person. I've been a qualified person since 2004. I joined the pharmaceutical industry almost 40 years ago, 39 years at the moment. I'm looking forward to the 4th decade and to see what I celebrate. I've supported many organizations in a full-time role and as a contractor, as a consultant, as an auditor, inspection prep, quality system optimization, and often training. And one of the reasons I was really keen to be involved in this particular webinar is because I find that the application of trend analysis is often poor. I do train the QPs at UCL, that's University College London, and they often struggle, even as the QPs, to really demonstrate an understanding of the difference between trend analysis, alert limits, our specs, and how they should be used. So I was pleased to be discussing with Janet how to about considering this webinar, and then Nessa joined us as well, because we need, of course, how to actually do it at the end. So I hope you found it useful, and now we'll continue. So what I've in hosting inspections and carrying out audits is that there's a lot of emphasis on culture. The mindset is changing, and a lot of the time companies are stuck in, yes, it's in spec. So why do we need to do anything? It's in spec. But they don't think about making sure that the future is going to be in spec as well. Now, ANNEX 1 reframes trending as control assurance. Now, I like the word assurance. Assurance is about making sure it's going to be all right, not just about checking that it was. So when you do your QC tests at the end, you're saying, yes, I did it right. But when you look at assurance, the assurance of control, you want to make sure that all the planned and preventative actions that you're going to take will make sure that it's going to be okay next time, and the next batch, and the next batch. Now, observing, monitoring, and actually challenging trends will give you more of an assured process. Your process is going to stay in control. When it's going out of control and you identify the out of control from your trend data, then you can see that it's time to take an action before you actually reject a batch, which from my perspective and from as a QP, from the company's perspective, manufacturing a product, you don't want to reject a batch because the analytical data tells you it failed. You want to be able to say in advance, as Janet just mentioned, the equipment's already failing. And you need to fix it before it does fail, and then you go forwards and you can actually continue manufacture and you continue to release batches. And I think that's always a better approach, which is why I always look at trend analysis when I'm conducting an audit, because it's a preventative measure rather than after it's failed, throw it in the bin, correct it, and start again. Inspection readiness. You need to be continuously ready. You need to make sure that you're always always ready to do the next thing. And trend analysis has been on the cards from a regulatory perspective for some time. PICS and ISO 9001 align with risk-based process understanding. Now, process understanding, you need to understand your trend. You need to know where it's going. So unfortunately now, compliance alone no longer satisfies the expectation of the scientific maturity for your process. You need to make sure that you've got your control charts in place where they're relevant. If you're just doing a no, yes, no test, how do you do a trend analysis? Well, maybe you have a 5% failure rate, and all of a sudden you get 10 in a row that fail. And your process allows you to make that change to fix it, but something's gone wrong. And you don't want to be making that change every single time. You don't want to be finding every time you use that particular column that you've got a 30% failure rate when you used to have 1.1 to 2% failure rate. So the trend may not be in the test result. The trend may be the number of times it fails. The trend may be the number of times you have to exit a room. So imagine you're in a grade A, and during a manufacturing process, 4 hours, you know that you're going to have to leave the room 3 times to collect, I don't know what, something that's available at a certain time point. Now, of course, you should redesign so you don't have to do that. But let's just use this as an example. And you find that for some reason, you're actually having to leave the room during a 4-hour shift 8 times instead of 3. Well, that's a change in trend. But it's one that people will often miss. Data. Firms collect terabytes of data, but almost always they analyze very little and sometimes none. They've got trending, it exists, but without context or ownership, does it actually mean anything? Now, I've been to a site in India, and I've been to sites in Slovenia, I've been to sites in the US, I've been to sites in the UK, in fact, throughout the world. And I asked them for trend data, and they show me a graph. And on that graph, they said, yes, the trend was fine because everything's in spec. But then you look at the data and you find that it's not time-based. So it can't actually see progression over time, because trending isn't discrete data. Oh, you've got 50 results for this manufacturing operation, and they were all passed. So the trend passed. But then you find that they were all from the different lines within that week. And another time I've seen it where they've plotted it as a graph instead of as a line chart. Well, what does that mean to you? Well, they're plotting the recurrence of a particular result. So when you do a bar chart and you say, we got this result 20 times, and we got this result 30 times, and this one 5 times. And this is our range, and they're looking at process control limits. And they're saying, yes, you can see it's normal distribution, everything's in spec, so it must have been in trend. But that's not telling you whether the 3 that you've got on the right-hand side and the 2 on the left-hand side had results that were out of spec. Spreadsheets. Now, they call them spreadsheet cemeteries. Why? Because all the data's in a spreadsheet, but it's never been used. Regulators expect data to drive decisions. We have the guidance in ICH Q10. But what do they mean by that? Well, it means actually reviewing the data in real time. What do I mean by real time? Well, say you do a manufacturing run today and you test it and the results come out tomorrow. Then you plot that data on your graph, which updates in real time on your Excel spreadsheet, or you use Empower to do it for you. And you see your immediate trend line, because trends as a line over time. It's not a pie chart, it's not a bar chart, it's a trend over time. It's variability over time. And then you have to make a decision, and you should be documenting that decision. So you've done your review and everything's acceptable. So you should write down trend reviewed or acceptable. maybe in your batch record, maybe in your analytical sheet, wherever it's appropriate. Trend reviewed acceptable, sign and date. Why should you document it? Well, if it's not documented, how do you know it's been done? So I have an academy I started, and it tells you how what we do is we teach you how to turn data into insight rather than having your spreadsheet cemeteries. You don't want the noise to influence your analysis of the trend. But that's not something we're going to go into today. So Annex 1 mentions 23 times that trending is intentional, as Janat just mentioned earlier on. Trending is evidence of process knowledge and control. If I have a process and it's in control, then I can plot the data and say, yes, that particular batch is in control because it's got normal distribution. What confidence have I got that next time it's going to be the same? Well, we've got the same input, so we expect the same output. But things change over time. Maturity of a quality system is proactive thinking and data governance. It's using that data for a purpose. It's not only using it, but it's identifying the right data that you want to use for a purpose. And what could the purpose be? Well, to assess whether that particular process has any potential assignable cause that needs to be addressed before the next batch is run. So maybe I just answered a question in the comments. If you have a trend that's going like this, and then suddenly all the data is up here, then here in this gap you've got an assignable cause. Now that assignable cause is a change in trend. If that change in trend is something that's going to result in reject, so around a specific number you're going to have variability. If that's then going to be producing 20% out of spec, you've got a problem with your batch. Audits. Many firms trend without acting on them. As I mentioned earlier on, you assess the trend and you do something. There's no point having trend analysis just as a report, just to show the next auditor. You're wasting time if you're not going to use it. We have so much data available to us these days. It's so much easier to capture. It's often hard to do the assessment. So what do? You put it into your MPOW system. Your MPOW system will then generate your trend data for you. You may have 1,000 pieces of data, but if your MPOW system is plotting it all for you and highlighting the trend result, the failure in the trend, the out of trend result, then you're going to be nowhere to focus, because we're supposed to, using risk-based approach, focus on the areas of concern. The actual amount of effort you put into it is supposed to be commensurate with the amount of risk. And it helps you do that. Excellence. Response and learning loop. ICH Q10 4.2. You need to feedback. You want a feedback loop. If you don't have a feedback loop, how are you going to improve? Your trend analysis can be used to give you that feedback loop. The investigation into the out of trend will help you to make sure that feedback gives you a positive result next time, and you get another batch that passes. Because nobody wants a batch that fails. The regulators don't, the employees don't, the company does, nobody does, and definitely not the patient. They want you to be supplying the product to the market, because then they can be treated. So what about alerts versus trend? An alert limit is an early warning within spec. A trend is a pattern indicating a loss of control before failure. So often you'll find that an alert limit is just when you've exceeded one particular value. But as Janet was saying earlier on, the trend is a pattern. It's an indicator that you're going to exceed the alert limit. It's an indicator that you could go out of specification. Now, if you confuse the two, you're going to not be able to take advantage of the opportunity to fix a problem. So often I find that people say, well, there's an out of trend there. It's not like it is normally. It's got 3 in a row that's out of trend, but it's okay because it's still within spec. And they do nothing. They don't change anything. They don't do further investigation. They just say it's okay because it's not out of spec. And then they come to the next batch and it fails. And they say, oh, it's out of spec this time. We're going to have to reject it. And then if you go back and you investigate, oh, we knew that was coming. Well, actually, we didn't, because we didn't have the procedure in place to determine what to do next in the case of an out of trend piece of data. All we did was we looked at it out of spec. So you have to make sure that your procedure for assessing an out of trend result or an out of trend sequence will actually lead you to make a decision. That decision could be to do nothing if it's not really out of trend. It could be to increase the amount of testing. It could be to verify that all the different parts of the process are still appropriately set up. Or it could be that you know that trend is a result of a failure in a certain part and you carry out the maintenance. Now, one of the most common activities that I find when things get out of trend is that you perform maintenance. It could be a change of seals, it could be lubrication, it's often a setting, it could be something else. It could be drift. Sterilization, for example, is a good example. You'll find that as the trend in the leak goes up, you can then carry out your preventative maintenance before you get a failed load. QA should distinguish data behavior from a specification breach. They don't just look and say, right, it's still in spec, we pass it. No, we're going to pass that particular batch, but what do we need you to do to make sure the next batch is okay as well? So what's the cost of ignoring signals? Well, trends predict that you're going to be out of spec. Out of spec is the final symptom. It's not the beginning. A delay in the response can result in batch failures or even recalls. If your trend data in your stability is demonstrating that your product is no longer in control, and you wait for after the trend failure and you look and it's gone out of spec, well, we've now got a shelf life of 2 years instead of 3. Why is that? Well, it's failed. Yeah, but what was giving me the indicator that it was going to fail? We had a change in one of the raw materials that we were aware of. We changed a particle size of the one of the excipients. And we knew that that could have an effect and we did nothing about it. Whereas actually, if we'd been looking at the trend and we'd done some extra work to determine whether that was impacting our product, it could be that you could have found out how to fix the problem before it happened and not had a mass recall for all the batches that you produced for the last 2 years when that change to the raw material was made. Now, I saw a message there, but unfortunately, I can't see it while I'm presenting, so hopefully somebody else will answer for you. Annex 1 calls for review of data at defined intervals. Now, often people will say, well, we'll look at it once a month, we'll look at it once a quarter, we'll look at it once a year. I actually feel that it's more important to look at the data, understand its behavior, understand the knowledge that you're gaining from that data, and you plot the results in real time. And you use that real-time data to decide whether you've got a change in trend or not, because you want to know as early as possible. Now, I had somebody ask me, can we just do annual trend analysis? And I said, yes, you can do your annual trend analysis. It's still within the regulations. But the risk is you identify a failed trend in month 2. And when you do your annual trend analysis, you reject or recall month 3 to 12. Now, wouldn't you rather know at the time when the problem happens? Because if you know at the time the problem happens, you can do something about it and not have that 10 months of risk of throwing everything in the bin. Not to mention the cost of bringing it all back and replacing all the product that you sold. Uninvestigated trends can mask equipment or training issues. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to answer the questions when we stop, and hopefully Janet or Inessa can look.
Paul,
Yes.
we can discuss them in the Q&A session. It's
Yeah,
not
okay.
a problem.
I'll stop
I
worrying
mark
about it.
them so we don't miss them. I mark them so we can come to them later.
Good. Thank you. Okay, so if you don't investigate your trends, you can find that there's an issue with your equipment or with training, and you keep having the problem. So when you do have a failure in trend, you do need to investigate. Now, how do you know it's a trend? Well, you predefine within your SOP how you do the trend analysis. And once you've done your trend analysis, what's the process you follow? And one of the key things, when do you have to escalate? So anybody can do trend analysis. If you've got it automated on Empower or any other system that you use, you can automate your trend analysis and you can automate the highlighting of an issue. When you automate the highlighting of an issue, anybody can look at it. The technician that's just done the test can see the trend, but they need to know what to do next. They need to know what action to take. And if they're unclear, they should always escalate. There needs to be somebody else that they know who to refer to, and that should be either in your work instruction, your SOP, even potentially on a form. Depends how you've got your quality system set up. True efficiency comes from prevention, not correction. If I can run a process and I can accept every batch, everybody is going to be much happier than 1 in 5 going in the bin. You want to prevent the failures, and that's what trend analysis allows you to do. You prevent the out of spec. Often you don't even get alerts because you've already identified a process that you can follow to ensure that your out of trends are addressed. Inspect data can still show process drift. ICH promotes risk-based evaluation beyond the specification. Limits define the past, and excuse me, I'll take a drink. Trends are used to predict the future direction of the results, the data, where it's going next. Statistical process control reveals silent loss of capability. We need to celebrate process control, not just compliance. And there are so many opportunities that you have to implement process control. I remember back in 1993, I did my first statistical process control implementation. I just finished my master's and I was given quality lead on a project. Now we had a process that was managed through weight. This was a paste spreading machine. And we said, right, we're just going to run it and we're not going to make any changes so that we can assess the capability of the process. And we want you just to run and run and run and don't worry about what the data says. We're just going to record it. And unfortunately, within 5 units, because this was a really slow process, there's only about 1,500 in a batch, it failed. And said, oh no, I'm going to have to stop the experiment. So then we did the investigation and we found that it was actually the operator that was keeping the product in spec. It wasn't the process. So we redesigned the way the process worked. And over time, we got to the point where we were in control. We were stopping to reject the batches. We weren't rejecting the batches anyway, actually. We were adjusting the weights as we went along, which of course with the automated processes you can't do. Maybe you could challenge that with a capsule machine, which automatically adjusts, but it's actually assessing the trend, not just compliance, and it's making adjustments on an ongoing basis. Data. What do we mean by when we talk about data? Data is the results. Is it the results? Not really. It's the data. It's in a context, and that's what we do when we put it into a trend analysis. We put it into context. So data is just numbers. You only get a meaning from it when you interpret it. Okay, so I've got a test result of 5. What does that mean? I've got another one here at 6.2. What does that mean? Well, if we don't have any context, it means nothing. Maybe it's pH. Maybe it's weight. Maybe it's the number that comes out at the end of the machine every 2 seconds. Data is just data. Data is numbers. You write it down somewhere, you put it in a spreadsheet. If it's not in context, it means nothing. You need to use it for something. I always say you need to do your analysis to make a decision, even if that decision is to do nothing. Excel sheets. Excel sheets create silos, mass correlations, especially when you have them spread over, I don't know, 50 different spreadsheets. Many companies use a spreadsheet for one batch. How do you use that to identify trend, to look for correlations between issues? You can't. You need a system where you collect that data. Q10, ICH Q10 links data integrity with knowledge management. Knowledge is the information, is the data with meaning in context. But it also needs the metadata. If you have a number and you just assess that against a limit, it's not really going to do anything. But in the context of the last 10 pieces of data, it's going to give you a result. I do remember when I was doing my master's, I read a book. It was called How to Lie with Statistics. And it's to take the numbers or the data out of context and not include the metadata. In my academy, we connect QA, QC, and operations so that the data actually does something, that it means something. And we help users to actually implement control processes, whether that be an SOP, a work instruction, a form, a digital system, an EQMS, Empower, CRM. There's many different ways. Empower, of course, is where we collect our data from the laboratory. Often line side as well now, because you can network your systems. But you need to know how to connect it. You need to know how to put it in there in the first place. And that's why we're here, to talk about it. There's a hierarchy of decisions. You can see that in the arrows at the top. Observation. What's the result? Plot that in sequence. Have we got a trend? We identify the trend. Maybe we've got corrective action that we need to take with this individual batch, but preventative to make sure that we're doing something about it. But that data then feeds into management review. Why? Well, management review is giving you an overview. Maybe we've observed a specific trend every week, every month, every quarter. I think Janet mentioned it occurs on a Monday. What happens on a Monday that's different to what happens on a Friday? Maybe you've identified that trend and you present it in management review because you can't identify the root cause. And you get a cross-functional team together and identify the issue. Each tier requires evidence and interpretation. Risk-based decisions have to be scientifically defensible, justifiable. Documentation links data to management accountability. And leadership have to own a data-driven culture. It's not a QA job. It's a team job. Now more than ever, quality needs to be the culture, not just the name of the department that deal with it. So what's the trend life cycle? Well, we detect it, we interpret it, we take action, we verify, and we learn. Now, I want to emphasize that last word, we learn. When we get knowledge, we learn. When we learn, we improve, provided we interpret, we take action, and we verify. Trend analysis needs to feed into CAPA evaluation. Annex 1 requires periodic trend analysis for control. We said earlier, periodic could be annual. But you're putting your risk at annual. So how often should you be doing your trend analysis? My preference is every piece of data, but that's not always practical. Sometimes you want to be doing a weekly oversight, but you've got a person that's a supervisor on the line doing the daily trend analysis. And you've got somebody else looking at individual result. But periodically is the requirement, the regulatory requirement. Verification confirms the kappa effectiveness and stability. So that's why we have verification in the life cycle, because we want to actually show, yes, the action we took does the work. It does make a difference. And when we use learning to close out the loop, we have continuous improvement. ICHQ 10, section 8. We want to make sure we're using the knowledge we gain. We always need to identify what could go wrong next. If it's going to impact our product and mean that we can't do what we want to do, which of course is release it and sell it, then we should be using that information to implement kappas, corrective and preventative action. Maybe not so much the correction, but certainly prevention and continuous improvement. So when do you want to trend? Environmental data, personnel, microbiological data, in process, physical and chemical parameters, critical to quality. Now that's an important point. What's critical? Which piece of data that we're generating bears no significance on the product? If that's trended, and you say, right, it's an out of trend. So what we're going to do about it? Well, it does nothing. Makes no difference. Why are you trending it? But you might have your conductance of the water. Resistance, conductance, depending on how you're doing it. And you find that it's gradually increasing. And that's because you've got contamination in there, and it actually means that you're going to fail shortly. And then you're going to be throwing your batch that's just been sterilized in the bin. Then we've got equipment performance, calibration verification records, microbial, particulate monitoring, for aseptic assurance, method precision and stability data reveal there's a subtle drift over time. So when do we trend? You trend when it's relevant to your product and could have an impact. And the easy way to identify what to trend is you get some data and you say, right, we've got 10 time points. You plot it on a graph. And you say, right, if that wasn't behaving the way it is there, and it was going up to this point here or down to this point, what would we do about it? And if the answer is nothing, then there's no point doing a trend. But if you then say, once it's reached that point, the next point is going to be out of spec or below or above the action limit. And what would we do then? Then we do this, this, and this, and you've got 3 actions. Then it's worth paying attention to the trend. It's about prediction. It's about quality assurance rather than quality control. Quality assurance is about what you do as a plan. It's about what preventative measures you put in place. All those planned and systematic activities, the blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to give you the full definition because I don't think it benefits you here. But you want to do what's needed in advance to make sure you get the result that you want at the end, and the product goes to the patient and they get cured or treated. So how often? Frequency needs to be determined by process risk and criticality. So if we know the trend from every piece of data could identify a failure, you do it every time. If it's going to be once a week, once a month, once a year, because otherwise we don't have enough data, use discrete data sets, move the front along. Now, what I have seen is people do trend analysis where they do annual amounts. Now, the problem with doing annual amounts, often the biggest failure in a trend is when you go from the end of the year to the next year. And by doing annual data, you miss that. So you want to do it with enough data to be able to show the change. And when you add one result on at the front, you can lose one result at the back, because that one's no longer relevant to the actual trend. But to assess that, use some imaginary data. Use the previous history that you've got. Look at when you last rejected a batch and look at the 20 batches before that. And then you'll see the trend that you want to identify so you don't reject it next time. But you can make a preventative action maybe 3-4 batches earlier. Define review intervals in SOPs and justify them. Data capture rate does not equal review rate. Align it by what intent and by what you're actually going to do about it. Often it can be the same, but assess it, think about it, use the knowledge you know of your process and product. Think about seasonal or campaigns or shift-based variation. Sometimes a campaign will be built up in 3, 4, 5, 10 sub-batches or batches, and you get variability within that campaign. But it might be that you get variability within 1 week of manufacturing that product, and it's classed as one batch. But actually you want to identify the trend earlier and take preventative action so that you can fix it before it gets to the end. You want to review the trend data and do something about it before you get a problem. Often I find when I'm auditing, even when I'm doing self-inspections, or when I'm doing supplier audits, or when I'm doing manufacturing audits, whichever, arbitrary limits are used, not supported by data history. These are the pitfalls. These are the things that can go wrong. So when we register a product, this should be science-based, not arbitrary. So we have things that are in the pharmacopoeias, but we need to use the data that we've got to identify and confirm scientific justification for the limits. Most common one I see, though, is treating an out of trend as in the same way that you treat an out of spec. You do your trend analysis and you say, right, you've done that, you've done that, you've done that. All the results are in spec. And at the end, you've got a spike that's gradual increase. And at the moment, it's all in spec. But it only needs to go out by 1% more over the range of that spec. And then it's failed. Well, in a manufacturing run, you've got variability. In your equipment, you've got variability. And you know, if you're on the floor, that one's going to fail next time. When I was working in microbiology, I could tell them, these are the data, that's going to fail next week. Go and do the cleaning. And they appreciated not having to throw the product in the bin because they'd done the cleaning before they did the next batch. And they just do a sporicide run. So we're seeing an increasing trend in mold growth. No statistical rationale for alert or action levels. Look at your process. Look at how it is in control. Look at your Six Sigma, your variability. Use it to identify what is in control to determine where your action and alert limits will be. Don't have it miles wider. Maybe your reject level's out here, but your alert should be a lot closer when you know that your process is in control. You don't want to ignore metadata, the analyst, the instrument, the shift, the time of day. I had one 4-cause audit that I did over in Sweden. We were looking at why we were getting failures. We were getting failures in assay. And it was about, I don't know, maybe 10-15% of the batches were failing. So I went to have a look. I thought, what's going wrong? I looked through everything from the production of the raw materials, the compounding, the manufacture of the finished product, everything. I even looked at the analysis and I'd gone into the lab, nice and cool, 18-20 degrees, all in control. And then for some reason, I don't remember why now, I had to go back to the lab to look at one more piece of information. Something that I'd noticed on the line that didn't seem quite right. And I went back to the lab and I walked in and I could feel the heat as I walked through the door. I thought, something's not quite right here. And actually, they were not monitoring the lab temperature. They had, I don't know, 15 HPLCs, GCs, a load of other equipment in there because it was the instrument room. And guess what? The data that we had that failed was from the afternoon. It wasn't the product at all. We'd been throwing this products in the bin because they failed assay. But they failed assay because the HPLC column was not at the right temperature, not because there was a problem with the product. Now, if I hadn't been looking at the metadata, I wouldn't have found that. If I hadn't thought about, well, what's the environmental conditions for that lab supposed to be? If I had just stayed back in the office and not gone to visit, I wouldn't have spotted it. Another pitfall, failing to trend negative zero growth data. That's part of your baseline trend. If you only trend the numbers without taking into account the zeros, then you'll find that your QSUM chart is a lot higher. Excuse me. Janet mentioned the QSUM chart already, but I thought here I'd sort of explain the principle. So a cumulative sum uses the average, say, of a year's data. It's often a year. Depends on the amount of manufacturing and amount of processing you're doing. So your cumulative sum is the difference between the average and your test result. So if you've got an average, say 3, and your result is 5, then you go up 2. Wherever you were from your previous result, you go up 2. If your average is 3 and your result is 2, you go down 1. And this actually increases the trend, makes it more easily visible. Now, when you use QSUMs, be careful because it doesn't work the same as discrete data. It's there on purpose to see that you've got a trend, especially with small numbers and zeros. So do be careful how you do it and when you make sure that you understand the implications of where you set your average. Your central point is where it should vary around. It's not the middle of your spec. And that's expected Annex 1, 935. Example, sterile manufacturing drift. We have weekly settle plate counts trending upwards, but within the limits. Now, the root cause that we don't know about it because we haven't investigated is the HVAC filter efficiency is degraded slowly over 2 months. But no alert limits are triggered because the results stayed in spec. Unfortunately, it got degraded further and we got a failure in the batch, resulting in costly investigation and delay, and of course, the batch in the bin. So we couldn't service the customers, we couldn't treat the patients, we didn't have a backup. But a basic trend review could have detected it much earlier. And immediately after this failure investigation was completed, we started trending the settle plate counts. But not just for that one machine, for the whole factory. Not just for that one area, for the whole factory, everywhere. All the way from unclassified through to grade A was then trended. Now, keeping the data in one system for that volume was hard. So we used Empower. And Empower allowed us to present the graphs and to identify actions when they were needed. Trend review boards need to be cross-functional. Examples, production, QC, QA, engineering, but anybody that's relevant should have appropriate frequency based on risk. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly, it could be daily, it could be weekly. It depends how much data you're generating. And of course, integrate it into management review, as we mentioned earlier. Dashboards can be used to speed pattern recognition and actions to be taken. But also think about who's going to do it, who's going to lead it. Think about what story the data is telling you. Now that might seem a bit strange, So imagine you've got a manufacturing process and you've got 3 different pieces of data from the same process. One of them's for main process, one of them's finished test, and one of them's stability. And they're all going in the same direction over the last 6 months. Now, is that a manufacturing issue or is it an analytical issue? Now, we look at more data and we see that the converse, so maybe that was the assay, and the converse, the water content, is going the other direction. Maybe that is the product. But you need to understand what it is that it's telling us. If it's reduced assay and increased related substances, the chances are you're getting more degradation. It's increasing for some reason. If you're getting a reduced assay and an increased water content, then you're absorbing water. But you can't just use one piece of data. You need to have something that allows you to look at it in combination. And that's where the story comes into it. Regulators expect learning systems. The UK, Europe, around the world, assess evidence of organizational learning. Continual improvement as a core requirement is ICH. ICH is global. It's adopted so many countries. Annex 1 links trends to Kappa effectiveness. Learning converts repeats into insights. But how do you manage that learning? Where do you track what's been happening? What data do you use? What reports do you use? What minutes do you discuss? Data-driven learning is baseline, not a bonus. It's essential. You need to understand so that you can consider the quality continuum. You could be reactive, you could be proactive, but predictive is really where we want to be. And this is where your out of trend investigations and your analysis are required, essential. SPC bridges compliance and prediction. AI enables predictive capability modeling, but be careful how you implement it. You need to have a human in the loop. Regulators will welcome science-based innovation. The Academy of Start trains predictive thinking rather than reactive. So how do you trend analysis? How trend analysis builds quality culture? It drives ownership, cross-functional accountability. Is that important? Well, as I said at the beginning, quality should be everybody's responsibility. If we can work together to make things better, then you're always going to have a result where the product is predictably passed. Promotes curiosity and continuous questioning. Why did that go wrong? Why did I get that piece of data? Why is that result different to what it is normal? Why does that piece of paper feel different? Why is that label shiny when it's normally opaque? When you have people that have a quality mindset, that they're curious and that they're questioning things that don't seem like normal, then you'll get predictive compliance rather than reactive. Connects the shop floor data to executive decisions. If you've got the knowledge, you can use it. Reinforces proactive over reactive quality and turns expectations into shared organizational values. Why do we want to share it? Because we're all here for the same reason. Manufacture our products, distribute our products, but most of all, treat the patient. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about my academy. We have a 9-step signature solution which converts fundamentals to excellence. Now we do have, it is a long process. It's not 5 minutes. You'd have to be with us for a year. But I also help with inspection-ready training. And I also do industry-specific courses for real-world GMP, which of course is based on examples. I like to make it accessible, sustainable, and globally scalable, so it's online. And we like to empower professionals to move into the position where they feel that they've mastered their subject rather than just being at the baseline, the fundamental level. But that's from my Academy of Pharmaceutical Excellence. And you will get the details at the end in a couple more slides. So the final call to action, don't wait for the out of spec. Listen before the data screams fail. Build a learning organization that acts early. Invest in interpreters. What does this information mean? What's the story? What's happening? Not just measurers. Join my Academy, community of GMP thinkers. Make excellent a habit, not an event. Excellence. Of course, have a little bit more to drink when you've been talking for so long. So I'm just going to leave you with my contact details. If you're interested in contacting me, you've got your email there, you've got the website and LinkedIn. I find that easier than my phone number, but if you contact me on LinkedIn, we can schedule a call. Or look at the website and you might find something there of interest already. You will, of course, get these informations when you get a copy of the slides. I didn't do the 2D barcode that Janet, that would have been a good idea, wouldn't it? But there you go. So I hope you found that useful. And now I'm going to stop my presentation because we've got a little more to come at the end. Only I can find out how to do it. So if I end the slideshow, it should become visible, hopefully. Oh, there we go.
Many thanks, Paul, for your presentation and very good structured explanation of trend analysis principles. I am now going to share my presentation. I hope you can see it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So hello again, everyone, and welcome to the last part of this webinar, alert limits and trend analysis in Empower CDS. So my name is Inessa Peters. I'm the founder of LabWissen in Switzerland, providing trainings and consulting for pharma companies worldwide. So after completing my master's studies in chemistry in Germany, I started my professional path in the pharmaceutical industry, working in the quality control departments by Eurofins, Merck and Sanofi. And later my career brought me to Waters. That's why Empower. And by Waters, I led customer education and was responsible for Empower trainings across Germany. And at the end of last year, my family and I moved to Switzerland. And that was a perfect moment for me to start my own company. So I can combine my experience in pharma QC, GMP, and training experts. So my vision by LabWissen is that Empower is a fundamental skill for every analyst, just like knowing English nowadays gives professionals confidence in their careers. Empower gives labs the confidence to work smoother, efficiently, and invest their time in tasks that really matter. And before we dive in the trend analysis in Empower, I want to start a little poll to find out how many people, so who from you work in Empower? So people who directly work with Empower, people who lead a team that works with Empower, and people who have no experience, never heard Empower, have nothing to do in it. So I started a poll. I would be happy if you just participate in it, because I really hope that there are many people working with Empower and who will be interested in this part of the webinar. So in the last two sessions, Janet and Paul gave a great overview of trend analysis principles. And these principles, such as data training, process control, and continuous improvement, are relevant across all GMP environments and crucial for the QC labs. So we use Empower in QC labs, right? So it's also important there. Trend analysis helps to ensure that instruments, methods, and results remain in statistical control. It acts as an early warning system, allowing you to detect slow changes, recurring issues, or performance drops before they lead to OS results or deviations. And it strengthens your data integrity, method robustness, and regulatory compliance. So I like to think about trend analysis like taking care of your expensive sports car. Maybe you have a Ferrari, maybe not. I don't have one, but I think it works the same way. So you don't want your really expensive sport car stop driving. You monitor its performance continuously. You listen to the engine, you check your tires regularly. So if here are some auto experts, sorry if I'm not accurate about it, but I suppose you have the same approach to your lab, to your lab processes. These are very valuable. We are working in pharmaceutical industry, and we are responsible for patients, and we are responsible to take care of our processes. So that's why we need to do trend analysis. So you see here a table of common areas and parameters for trend analysis in QC labs. There are pretty many of them, but it doesn't mean that you should monitor all of them. The key is to prioritize 2 or 3 of them, of the most critical parameters for your lab, and focus on those. So you will get these slides afterwards, so we can go further, no need to read all of them. So here's an approach how to perform trend analysis in QC labs. So first of all, you need to define what to trend, choose parameters that reflect performance of your lab. Then you need data. You need a data set. So probably you already have one. If you're working in a routine laboratory, you're already performing the same analysis monthly, yearly, so you already have enough data. So you can pull this data from your CDS, or you can analyze it directly in Empower. And it's necessary that you include metadata such as date, analyst, instrument, column, etc. If you're working with Empower, you certainly know that it's based on Oracle database and that all metadata is connected to your results. So it's not a problem to take out this information in case, of course, that if you document it, for example, column, you need to document it by your own. The third step is you should visualize your trends, and you can use control charts for it, or as Janet mentioned, there are other types of plots to do this. Then you set your alert and action limits to get these lines where your results should be inside. And the last step, review and escalate. So you need to perform periodic, for example, monthly or quarterly reviews and investigate any adverse trends proactively. In Empower, we have many powerful built-in tools and reporting functions to perform and visualize trends effectively. And that is what I'm here to talk about. So first of all, we have custom fields. Custom fields allow you to calculate everything you want in Empower. So you don't need to use any external source. You can also do evaluations in Empower, comparisons between data. Then we have a limit step in the processing method, where you can set your alert and action limits. And of course, we also have batch processing result sets. So it's a general recommendation for all GMP labs. You work with result sets doing batch processing. And here for trend analysis, it's also relevant because you want to collect your data in the packages. So result set help you further filter your data out easily. On the next level, so that was the level of collecting data, processing data. On the next level, we have how do we collect data from available? How do we filter it out? For that, we are using view filters. I hope people who work with Empower know about them because it's a really powerful tool in Empower. So with view filters, we can select data within a specific timeline, within a same instrument method, within the same column. We can do really good filtering of all data that we have in Empower. Then we have export function. Not really necessary, but if you want to do trend analysis outside of Empower, for example, in Excel, and you already have your spreadsheets, there is export function, so you can easily take out your data into Excel. If not, and you want to perform your trend analysis in Empower, you can work with report methods, and definitely with the summary by all report method type, and use control chart there to visualize your alert and action limits. So now we will have an example how we will perform peak area trending. So I'm not sure about the poll, if it worked or not. I just try to do it by myself. Oh, I see. There are, okay, 6 who are working daily and two who are leading teams. I hope that just not everyone answered this poll because total is 12. So I hope there are more people working with Empower.
Yeah, I would like to say that I wasn't able to submit my.
Okay.
I don't know why, but I guess that it could happen also to others participants.
I suppose to. So I'm using it first time, so I don't know how it really works for you as participants, but I'm happy that there are also other people. Okay,
yeah,
I see
it
that
seems that it's not working.
It looks like it's related to the version of Teams, Inessa. So mine says this feature is not available yet in your version of Teams.
Okay. Nevertheless, I hope it's still interesting for many of you. Good. So let's take a look into this example, peak area trending. So first of all, why would we do this trend of the peak area? It will help us to monitor detector and injection performance, identifying sensitivity drift or injection issues. Then it reveals sample preparation or reagent problems, and also it supports your assay stability and shows consistent response over time. What will be the approach in Empower? First of all, we need to calculate statistics. We need to calculate at least, so my recommendation would be at least 60 results. Well, yeah, within the last 3 months results, and you calculate your mean area. So in my example, it's 2000. Then we calculate standard deviation. In my example, it's 40. Then you define limits. You define alert limit and you define action limit. In my case, these are these ranges. And then based on these limits, we plot control charts and we review new data regularly based on this already existing trend. What do we need to keep in mind? So we are always comparing results from the same instrument method, from the same analysis type. We also should think about relevance of columns that we're using. Is it relevant that we're using same column, same system? Do we have big fluctuations between them? Or we can stick always to the same column, same system, defining the performance of those ones. Then, when we're talking about area, we don't want to compare between each other areas from samples. We do it from standards from the same concentrations. Then we need to take into consideration only the last results. I hope you know what this means, last results. you know, when you process sample sets in Empower, you can create 1, 2, 3, 5 multiple result sets. So you don't want to take results from the same channel, like 5 results from the same channel, just process with different processing methods. You just take the last one, the relevant one, the correct one, we say. Then you need to review your trends regularly. For example, Paul said he will to review every result, but that can be very time cost, or you do it maybe on monthly basis. It's how you can define it by yourself. And you need update limits by major changes. So how do we set alert limits in Empower? We have a limit step in our processing methods. Maybe some of you have seen it, already used it. Maybe not, just pay attention next time you're processing your samples, you're working with your processing method. So this limit step, with this limit step, you can define allowable ranges for each peak separately. Limits appear as minimum and maximum values in summary charts. Summary charts is the name of control charts in Empower. And a limit step flags out of range results in summary tables, reports, and peaks table in review. So that is it, how it built. We have here 3 areas. In the first area, you will see all your components. And here you can select component and define specific limit for it. So we can always define limit per component. Then we have a part with suitability limits. Here we can select the parameter that's interesting for us. In our case, in our example now, it's area, and define limits for it. We can set action limits and we can set alert limits. And this part, acceptance criteria limits, is used for more complex limits. Here you can perform calculations similar to calculations we can do with custom fields. So you can perform calculations not actually building a custom field. You can do here comparison between results. For example, you want to check area of peak in your standard with compare it with area in the blank. And you can do here evaluations. So limit step is quite a powerful tool, not only in trend analysis, it's just a tool to set your specification limits. So I'm telling more about it in processing trainings and in the expert training. So if you're interested, you're very welcome to get to training with me. I will be happy to tell you more about this step. But now let's come back to our example. So we set these limits for the area trending. And here how I would define them in Empower. In the field name, I will pick up area. So actually in the field name, you can pick all parameters that are existing in Empower and also your custom fields. Then you can set your error limit. Error limit is in other words, action limit. So I set here lower error limit and upper error limit. And then I set here also warning limits, that is alert limits. And then I also can set that I want to check these limits only during calibration. That means I only check them for standards. I can also work here with targets. It's, for example, for amount. Amount should be 200 plus minus 5%. So I can set target 200 and error 5%. And then Empower will calculate limits by itself. This is how it will look like if your parameter is outside of alert limit. The component will be marked and the parameter itself will be marked. So you can see directly where is an OS. So that is very great feature in limit step. So it, for example, you probably know when you're working in the lab, it's doing data review. It always really So for me, it was always a stressful part of work because you need to be very, very attentive when you're checking numbers and comparing them with your specifications. So when you're using limit step for that, your OS result will be highlighted. So it reduces your risks, reduces your errors by the data review. So you're working also with less stress. So the next step will be select results which you want to trend. And for that, we are using view filters. So with view filters, we can select and display only the data you need. We can filter by data, measured instrument, or other possible parameters. We can focus on relevant results for trending, and we can save and reuse those filters for regular analysis. So these are our notes. What do we need to think about when we are doing trading? Which result we should filter? I mentioned most of them. There is also one thing that what you should think about if you're picking results from one project or from several projects. It's also possible to create filters that work in among all projects in Empower or selected projects in Empower. So you're not limited on data from only one single project. So here's a little example for area trend analysis. So that is my view filter. I put a name here for my pick, for my component. I set it's component A. Sample type, standards, and data acquired. I want to see all results in the last 30 days. I can also put date here, just saying I want to see results from 1st October till 22nd of October. So view filters are really powerful. If you want to learn more, yeah, it's also part of trainings that I provide, but I can also do mini trainings on view filters because it's really great, not only for trend analysis, but also for data reviewers. So when you selected your results, you want to bring them to your report method, to a report. And here you definitely use summary by all report method type, and you use control charts to build this plot. Couple words about control charts. They are not called control charts in Empower. I was really spending a lot of time looking for them one time till I realized that I are actually called summary plots. You can find them in the list on the left under system suitability groups, and they're called SS, summary plots, system suitability summary plots. And here, the one I picked up was summary scatter plot area. You can try the other ones, yeah, if there are other ones more suitable for you. But let's take a look at this one. So you can see here these lines. Yeah, you can see this is the same plot as Jana taught us, not the same, but similar. And we have these lines showing us action limits and alert limits. Then you can define that your OOS dots will be with a color. So I set it to red, so I can see instantly what is outside of my action limit. And you can then see your trend. Yeah, sure, with my 12 results, it's not really visual, but maybe you can see a little trend that my results are going down, and you see actually this point is OS. So probably I need definitely to look at my results. What was wrong here? Why they're going down? Yes, so these summary plots, it's a graphical tool to visualize trends over time. It plots parameters. You can define parameters you want to plot. You can set any parameter you have. It plots it versus result ID or versus date. You can also set versus, so what should be at the x-axis. It shows error and wanted limits, and it helps detect drifts, shifts, and out of control points. So these are the tools in Empower. And I imagine that after this webinar, many of you will rethink your trend analysis approach. Maybe you're already doing it, or maybe you want to implement it. So it's perfectly it's really makes sense to do it because you don't want your expensive sports car to stop running. You want to take action before any deviations come. And to help you with this, I created an exclusive bonus offer for you, for the participants of this webinar. So I want to offer you a consulting session on trend analysis in Empower for free, 45 minutes. And I've reserved 15 slots next week in my calendar for these sessions. And in these sessions, we'll work together on your workflows, and I will guide you step by step on setting limits, view filters, and control charts in Empower for your analysis. So we can pick one parameter relevant for you, and I will help you to create these settings, so to create limits, to create view filters, and create control charts. And afterwards, you will receive your own personalized setup guide. So step-by-step approach how you do trend analysis in your lab. So this offer is limited. I reserved only 15 sessions and only next week. So if you want to book a slot, you can do it right now via QR code. And I can also post a link to these slots, to this offer here in chat. So you can also reserve a slot at your via this link. So many thanks everyone for your time. Now we have our last session. So we have 5 minutes left, but I think nobody will be against if we stay a bit longer so we can ask all questions.
Fortunately, I do have to leave it in 5 minutes.
So people who need to leave can leave, no problem. Maybe we can take a look at the questions right now, Paul, the ones that you would like to answer, and the other ones we can take with Janet together.
Actually, I've been down the list. I've only got one left that I've not answered in the meeting chat already. And that's about whether you should normalize the data prior to analysis. So that one, you only need to normalize the data if you're using different formulations or different strengths. Otherwise, or different processes actually. Otherwise, you can use the original data. I wouldn't tend to combine. I would, by preference, trend analyze the individual processes, the individual products. But if you haven't got enough for a specific line, then you can normalize it. It's often less predictive because you've actually amended something normally from one to the next.
There is an extra question that say, hi, Paul. When you spoke about negative zero trending, what does that mean? What is the expectation?
So with environmental data, you'll have a lot of zeros, more than likely. And you still need to use them in the assessment for your QSUM. You can't ignore zeros just because they're zeros. So say you've got, I don't know, 1,000 pieces of data and 800 of them are zero. If you only use the data that's a number to do your average for the year, then you'll find that your average is a lot higher than it should be. And in doing so, you'll bias the cumulative sum graph to a higher level, and you'll get out specs that you wouldn't normally have expected, because your trend analysis won't be as sensitive as it should be. I wouldn't rush to identify an outlier in trend analysis. I don't know, at Macquarie. I wouldn't. Your outlier could be your first indication of an out of trend, so I wouldn't identify them. That's more when you're looking at process control than trend analysis. got one more. Does that mean for trend analysis we use one project in which multiple analyses on different days are carried out? The trend analysis for separate projects.
I think
not
that
sure.
was from my
What's-
part more.
Go on then,
I
'cause
think
don't
it's
know
more
it.
about analysis, right? It's more about so it's
Go on then.
what I wanted to say there. I hope I didn't confuse you, Brian. What I wanted to say here that it's possible in Empower to get data from different projects. Yes, so it's not like very clear where you find it, but there is this global projects view where you can select different projects. But you always compare data within the same analysis. Yes, and within the same system, within the same column. But many companies, what I've seen, they have, for example, for the same analysis, they create every month new project. Yeah, but you want to do trend analysis within like big period in not future, another one, backwards. And it's possible to take like 10 projects of the same analysis and take data from them and put them in Empower reports and do control charts. That's what I wanted to say. Yes. But you never do multiple analysis in one trend.
Fortunately, I need to leave now. So if anybody does need to get in touch, use the contact information that will be in the presentation. I hope you all found it useful.
Yeah, you shared. Many
Thanks,
thanks,
Vanessa
Paul.
and Janet. I'll leave you to it to analyze.
Have a great evening. So we can take a look if there are any questions left unanswered, because I didn't have an overview what Paul answered. We definitely have one question in Q&A part. I will just go in. So from Fatimi. Janet, can you take it?
Yeah, the question says, it's about the type of deviation, nonconformity related to an OOT and OOS result. In your idea, in a regulatory perspective, OOT and OOS laboratory results can be considered to which deviation nonconformity classification, major or minor? To be honest, it depends of too many factors. The first of all is what parts of your process if it's an environmental monitoring, if it's something regarding equipment. So depends of the criticality of the process or service that you are evaluating. Also, it depends of course of the repeatability of your out of trend. It is not the same a node of trend and a node of specification. For example, for a node of specification, yes, is a deviation, it's a non-conformity in 100% of the cases, and out of in a node of specification. In a node of out of trend, generally the companies have an internal SOP that have their own flow for the treatment of the data and the information in a different way that sometimes could finish as a deviation or maybe sometimes not. So all of them depends of your process, of your SOPs, of your rules, of the criticality of the risk. So it's a general question, but must be answered individually. If you have any specific example and you would like to share with me, please share with me and I will try to give some solutions, examples, or try to identify how is the criticality of that deviation, if it's a deviation, yeah.
I think you answered all questions. Paul was very active in the chat, so he took already them. Oh, I see now some other comments. What Empower do when there is action in environment monitoring? Do they also provide it microorganized library?
I guess that
I don't.
she's asking about about the root cause identification in case of an environmental monitoring. Usually when you find, when you have identify in the environmental monitoring some microorganism, you can identify the root cause of the contamination based on the type of microorganism that was identified. So maybe he or she is asking about that. I'm not sure. Can you confirm, please, Anikita? Exactly.
So there are no libraries in Empower. So if you're talking if there is something coming from waters, I'm not familiar with it. No, but you cannot. There is a way you create library for yourself. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
familiar with this analysis.
No, usually those root cause analyses are described in internal SOPs, or you have some yes, procedures or something, but the investigation must be done from outside the Empower system because it's not part of the data analysis. It's more like an investigation, and this step must be done after the results you obtain in the Empower or whatever you would like to do the trend analysis.
I suppose now we answered. No, I cannot. So let's go for the next questions. I would set up alert and action level from trend analysis of PVPQ phase 1 and 2. What would be calculated? Janet, are you familiar with it? With these phases?
It is purified water. The question is for purified water. Yeah. So how will you set up an action level for the trend analysis? Okay, because I see that all questions come around the same topic at the end of the day, because the trend depends of your own data. So there are not pre-established limits. The limits must be defined by you based on your historical data. So what will be calculate if you have, it depends if you have an historical data or not. If you don't have an historical data because it's the first time that you do the process, you must do that based on risk analysis. I don't care what are the limits that you define, but you must get a good justification to define those limits as alert limits. So you know your process, you are the owner of the process, you must to decide that. And the same happens if you have an historical data, because your historical data could be totally different from somebody that is doing something really similar to you and they have other results. So you must to analyze based on some strategies and tools that we saw in the webinar to define internally with your team, with an interdisciplinary team, what are your limits. And even those limits are not fixed. You can and you must to adapt those limits based on not just the historical data, even with the last events, or even if you have any deviation, or even if the limits are defined by the regulations, you must update those limits. Please don't forget that you must do two types of trend analysis. The result must be put under evaluation in the moment, as was mentioned by Paul, but also I mean, at the end of the year, for example, you can identify through the analysis of KPIs, you can do a retrospective analysis, and you can collect all the entire data, and you can redefine those limits again.
Thank you, Janet.
You said you talk about phase 1 and 2 of qualification. Yes, exactly. How in the phase 1 you don't have historical data, so you must do that based on risk. And then once the qualification is end, you must be conscious that the limits must be updated continuously. Yeah, you must do it based on risk analysis. I'm sorry, I'm reading the following. Can I follow? Yes, exactly. That's perfect. WHO guideline is perfect. And also you have, of course, for the out of specification, the USP limits also.
Regarding the question from Ramesh about custom fields and system suitability, how to configure and monitor them using audit trails for compliance tracking, please. So here, with custom fields, you can do calculations, right? When you're working with audit trail in Empower, you can also use view filters. And when you need to monitor your custom field calculation, you work with view filters to pick up the data you need. And then you work with report methods and summary plots where you can plot the same, this parameter that custom field calculated in your summary plot. And never underestimate view filters. There are really many things you can show with them, filter with them, yeah, to see the trend. Which USP chapter is mentioned in order to determine alert level and actual level of PW?
Just let me check and I will try to contact you through LinkedIn if that's work well, or please send me an email and I will give in some support with the initial qualification of the purified water system, and I will share with you the USP requirements.
Propose that we finish our webinar, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. All of us are on LinkedIn, or you can find our emails at the websites. So you will get shortly the presentation from this session and the recording. So you feel free to reach us. We are looking forward to hear from you and hope you enjoyed this webinar.
Thank you very much also to you, Ainisa. I learned too much about the Empower system because it's something that is really new for me. I usually see this from outside, and to understand a little bit more about this is really valuable. I think that all companies must to implement Empower to keep the trend under control, between other things. And it saves a lot of time and problems.
And I like that we are looking at it from different perspectives. So I'm in Empower as analyst, from this side, and you're working as an auditor from the other side. So it's a different perspectives to think about. Yeah, and I think there will be more webinars with us together. So following us, and we are looking forward to see you there and to hear from you. Bye-bye. Many thanks.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.